my name is Rich and I'm here doing a video. This video is directed at the people of West Virginia, not all of them. People living in southwest Pennsylvania, southern Ohio, southern Indiana a little bit of southern Illinois, Kentucky, probably Tennessee, maybe western North Carolina, and of course Colorado, Utah, Wyoming. And in this video, Wyoming, the state of Wyoming, is going to have the advantage. Where I come from, there's a lot of Wyomings, but I'm speaking to the state of Wyoming here. Alright, coal. Wake up, people. Wake up, stop being in denial. Coal is dying. It's on its deathbed. It's on life support. It is almost comatose. You have to wake up to the fact it's going away. Stop being in denial. It's history repeating itself. Now I know a little bit about coal. No, I know a lot about coal. I can talk about coal for 24 hours straight, probably. I do a great filibuster talking about coal, boring you all to death. I know about coal because I was born and raised in northeast Pennsylvania. That is former coal country. Anthracite coal, hard coal. And just to give you a comparison here, this is 4 pounds of sugar. This is how much I would know about coal. Okay? Right there. That would be how much I know about coal. This here, can you see that little bit? Can you see that little bit of sugar crystal? That is how much our president knows about coal. Now I'm sure you people down there in West Virginia, you know more than this about coal. But I'm just making the comparison. So don't listen to our president. Coal is not, he's not saving any coal jobs. Coal is going away. And you know why? Don't blame it on regulation. Don't blame it on the Obama administration. If you want to blame the demise of coal on something, you can blame it on good old-fashioned capitalism. You can blame it on competition. You can blame it on American ingenuity, Yankee ingenuity. I know Yankee is a curse word down there in Tennessee. Those are the things you can blame coal's demise on. It's happened before, and it's happening again. Well, just picture this for a moment now. You have a house, and I'm very familiar with this, and it burns coal, has a coal furnace in it. 50 years ago, this type of furnace was very prevalent. 60 years ago. Let me get back to northeast Pennsylvania for a second here, okay? Sorry. There's a lot of Wyomings in northeast Pennsylvania. Matter of fact, Wyoming Valley is named, the state of Wyoming was named after the Wyoming Valley. Because the Wyoming Valley was around like 100 years before the state of Wyoming was even thought of. And you got Wyoming Borough, West Wyoming Borough, you got Wyoming County, you got Wyoming Avenue, you got several Wyoming avenues, and I think there's a couple more Wyoming counties up around the United States. But anyway, Wyoming Valley, coal mining. Anthracite coal was mined in northeast Pennsylvania, like about 6 or 7 counties: Luzerne, Lackawanna, Schuylkill, Carbon, Northumberland, a little bit of Columbia, I think a little bit in Wyoming, I'm not sure, Wyoming County, and Forest City. What's that? It's either Bradford or Susquehanna County. And if I left off another county, I apologize. So coal was mined there for 150 years. They started mining coal in northeast Pennsylvania in like 1810, 1812, 1820, somewhere around there. It kicked up production, okay? And up until 1867, half the coal mined in the United States came from those little section of northeast Pennsylvania. Half the coal mined in the United States came from those counties. And this was the coal that heated the homes, in New York City, in New Jersey, heated the buildings in New York City, went down and fueled the steel mills in Allentown, Bethlehem area. Remember Bethlehem Steel? That coal went down to Philadelphia, probably Delaware, probably to Maryland and Washington, D.C. It's a lot of coal pulled out of those. And even though 1867 half the coal was mined, then more mines further west, and I'm not talking way west, I'm talking western Pennsylvania and Kentucky and West Virginia came online, and so more coal was mined, and we needed that coal for the Industrial Revolution, okay? And this is the coal that fueled the Industrial Revolution. So by 1917, that was the peak year for anthracite coal production. The peak year, 100 million tons of coal was pulled out of the ground in northeast Pennsylvania in 1917. 100 million tons. Imagine that volume. Imagine that. A lot of coal. And in addition to the coal, I mean, you also pulled out waste rock and stuff. 100 million tons. But that was the peak in 1917, and so coal started sliding down. Now it picked up a little bit during World War II because it was a substitute good for gas and oil, which was needed for the war effort. And there were still some coal-powered ships out there that the Navy, the Army, the Marines were using, cargo ships. So slight peak. I mean, it peaked in 1917, went up a little bit, but it was going down and went up a little bit in World War II. But guess what? All the deep mining coal and most of the strip mining coal, it was gone in northeast Pennsylvania by the 60s. The 1960s, it was gone. There's still a tiny, minuscule amount of coal mined. It's insignificant in the whole world of things. Okay, but it's gone. It's no longer around because of competition and capitalism. Now just imagine a coal. You heat your house with coal. This is the way it was years ago. You had this big furnace down in the basement. So it burned coal. So you ordered coal. A coal man came and delivered coal. And he had these really cool trucks. It looked like a little dump truck, but then the whole box and bed lifted up in the air like on scissor jacks, and lifted up, a huge scissor jack, lifted up in the air to get elevation so the coal's very slippery, so the coal can slide down a chute into the coal bin. The coal bin is typically, 99.9% of the time, the coal bin was located at the front of the house. So the coal slides down into coal bin. The coal man's job's done. He gets paid, he goes away. Now the homeowner, in order to fuel that furnace, has to go into that coal bin, shovel the coal into buckets, walk it over to the furnace, shovel it into the furnace, open the hot door, shovel it into the furnace. Now later on they came up with a really cool self-feeding coal furnace where you had a 55-gallon barrel over here and you filled that up with coal, and there was a pipe going from the bottom of the barrel into the furnace, and it had a corkscrew in it. And that corkscrew, when the thermostat called for heat, that corkscrew would turn and it would pull that coal automatically into the furnace. That was really cool. Okay, that was a big step, but you still had to fill up that 55-gallon barrel by hand. Unless you had children, then they did it. And so that 55-gallon barrel, maybe you had to fill it up every 2 or 3 days, depending on how cold it was. That hand feed furnace, you had to do that every couple hours if you wanted heat. And a lot of times the hot water heater was connected to the furnace too, on the back of the furnace. So if you wanted hot water in the middle of summer when it's 90 degrees out, you had to fire up the furnace. Okay, so now along comes natural gas and oil. But natural gas, you just take a pipe and you run into the house from the street. That's it. You turn the thermostat on the wall, you got heat. You don't have to do anything. The hardest thing you had to do was writing out that bill to the utility company, writing out that check to pay the bill to the utility company. That was a lot easier. That is why natural gas kicked coal's butt at the beginning of the century. It was a lot easier. Just imagine how big those furnaces were in those buildings in New York City. Heck, I remember our high school was fired by, most of the schools in our school district was fired by coal. There was only two. When I was in school, there was only two that burned natural gas. But most of them were, and I could just remember, most of them burned coal, and I could just remember the janitors. It was a janitor's job to sit outside the furnace room and shovel coal into it when it was needed. But shoveling the coal in, you're not done, because then you have to clean up the ashes. So you had to scoop the ashes out the bottom and dispose of them. And a lot of landfills of 100 years ago were made up of ashes, tin cans, and glass. Not glass bottles, because they were recycled, but just some glass that might get broken or something like that. Not a lot of, no plastic at all. So it wasn't you know, a bad thing, coal ash, although I think it is now. But anyway, okay, so figured out what we did with that furnace in that house. A couple of tons a year, 3 tons, 4 tons a year of coal being burned. Now multiply that by 1 million maybe. That's what a power plant, a coal-fired power plant has to go through. And I can remember a coal-fired power plant down there in Humlocks Creek. At one end you had huge piles of coal, then you had the power plant, and at the other end you had huge piles of ash. Well, that power plant is now, it's still running, but they converted it to gas, natural gas, because we have an abundance of natural gas. Now, I'm not here to tell you Marcellus Shale or shale gas in other parts of the country is a good thing, a perfect thing. It's not perfect, okay? It's not perfect. It needs a little bit of work, a little bit of tweaking, okay? A little bit more control. But I'll tell you what, gas is a heck of a lot better than coal. And that's why power plants are converting. And there's no ash to clean up. Really, no ash to clean up. You just run a pipe into the power plant and boom, it's automatic. Totally automatic. That coal-fired power plant, you had the coal had to be delivered in large trucks or railroad cars, and then you had to unload it, and it had to go up a conveyor belt, gets fed into the furnace, and then you had to clean up the ash and dispose of the ash. Nothing. Natural gas, real easy. Now with oil, we had, for a while there, we had some oil-fired power plants, but they didn't last too long. But we do have oil heated homes, but that's the same thing. You just the oil, the biggest part of that is delivering the oil into a tank, and then from there it's easy for the homeowner. There's a pipe from the bottom of the tank into the furnace, and the oil flows into the furnace, and easy peasy. So if you want to know, and so previously we drilled natural gas, and I remember in the 70s there were shortages of natural gas. But blame it on competition, American ingenuity, Yankee ingenuity, some bunch of petroleum engineers coming up with this great thing called directional drilling. That's what's putting coal out of business, so you can blame it on that. Not fracking, not hydraulic fracking, because they fracked oil wells for years. They had fracking of oil wells in the 1870s. I mean, they would drop explosives down into the well, nitroglycerin, to break up the rock so the oil would flow easier to the wellhead. All right, make it an easier path. And there's a guy who became a millionaire because he came up with a technique that made the blast, directed it downward as opposed to upward, because when something explodes it goes in all directions, but you want it to go down, and he came up with a technique for doing that, and he made a ton of money off of it. So we've had fracking for many, as long as there's been oil wells, we pretty much had fracking. And we had hydraulic fracking. The first hydraulically fracked well was around 1947. So we've had fracking for 70 years plus. There's a controversy about who was the first to do hydraulic fracking, but it's been around for a while. The thing putting coal out of business is directional drilling. Now just imagine this. We knew about Marcellus Shale for a long, long time. We knew it was there, okay? We knew about the shale in the Permian Basin, the oil-bearing shale. We knew about the shale up in North Dakota. We knew it was there. We knew it, okay? But we didn't have a way to exploit it. We didn't have a way to mine it. Because previously, a drill bit would come down vertically, straight. And let's say you got like 100 feet of shale there underground, 2 miles underground. So that drill bit is only exposed to 100 feet of shale. And since that gas is locked up in the shale, it's not feasible to drill into 100 feet of shale. But along comes directional drilling. So you got that 100 feet of shale. Let's go with this. And I hope Mr. Trump, you're not intimidated by my large hands here. But let's go with that. That's 100 feet of shale there. And you got the drill bit coming down. It's coming down, and as it approaches that shale, they turn it 90 degrees. And they follow that shale seam. They follow it for up to 2 miles. 2 miles. That's 10,500 feet that you now expose to the drill bit. And so they, frack, release that gas. The gas is free, comes up the wellhead, and there's a tremendous amount of shale down there. But the thing is, coming down and you're going in that direction. Let's call that west. Okay. When they get done exploiting that, they can back it up and they can come down and go in that direction. Let's call that east. And then when they get done there, they can pull it back up and go in that direction. Let's call that north. And when they get done, then they could go in that direction. Let's call that south. So now from one wellhead, one drilling pad, you have exploited 42,000 feet of shale. And I'm sure they're probably drilling further than 2 miles. They're just not telling us. I don't know. But do you think that they're going to stop at just four cardinal directions? No. They're going to pull that back up, and then they're going to go northwest, northeast, southeast, southwest, like spokes of a wheel from one drill pad. That is American ingenuity. That is what makes this country great. That is what's putting coal out of business. And this natural gas is not going away. It's going to be around for a long time. I'm not 100% approval of it, but natural gas is far better than coal if it's done correctly. If it's used correctly, if it's drilled correctly, if it's pulled out of the ground correctly. Now, northeast Pennsylvania, no coal mines whatsoever. Even pretty much all the remains of coal mines, buildings are gone. You might point out a building, an old guy like me, well, I'm not that old, but it was all, mining was all gone by the time I got to be a kid, okay? But I do remember the scars of coal mining. I remember the buildings. I remember the cleanup. I remember government-financed mines subsidence because some of the mines were caving in and taking houses with them. And in the 70s, they got money from the federal government to fill those coal mines back up. But only the top layer. There's coal mines going down many, many layers in northeast Pennsylvania. It's like a big honeycomb underneath there. They're filled up with water now, and so coal is never coming back to northeast Pennsylvania. And it's not going to return to your location. Okay? It's going away. Now Wyoming, the state of Wyoming, you have the one advantage here. You're going to be the last place where coal is mined in this country because you have the most cost-effective way of doing it. over in Wyoming, if you didn't know this, you pull off the, I think it's called overburden, the stuff on top of the coal, I don't know, 50 feet, 60 feet, 100 feet, and there's these huge seams of coal underneath, 100 feet thick, 150 feet thick, and all you do in Wyoming is you just drill down, set off some charges, blow that coal up, and you come along and scoop it up. That's a simplification, but that's pretty much what's going on. And you load it into railroad cars and you send it to the Midwest. But the Midwest is changing. The Midwest is adapting. They're changing to natural gas fired power plants. Now we have more electricity generated by natural gas than we do by coal. Natural gas is merely the bridge to the future. You want to know the future? Yeah, it's wind, it's solar. And contrary to what our president has told you recently, like I believe he was in West Virginia and he said, you know those I think he called them windmills. I'm not sure about that part, but they're actually wind turbines. There's a big difference. You know those windmills, they just can fall over and collapse, and you know those pipelines, they just get all twisted up. Think about this. Use the gray matter between your ears. Have you ever seen a pipeline get twisted up? I mean, if there's an earthquake, a severe earthquake, the pipeline shatters, it breaks. It doesn't get twisted. How does a pipeline get twisted? Now, during war, it might get twisted, and you might see pictures of pipelines in Germany, Nazi Germany, all twisted up after an Allied bombing attack, or you might see pipelines all twisted in Japan, in wartime Japan, after a fleet of, a squadron of B-29s went overhead. Pipelines don't get twisted up. Windmills, or now I'm talking like the president, wind turbines, maybe windmills have collapsed because they're older, but wind turbines, how many wind turbines do you know that collapsed? I know of one in the Netherlands that started spinning, and the brake didn't kick in and spun out of control and just fell to the ground. Maybe a dozen tops fell over. But you drive across this great country of ours, you drive along Interstate 80, and you're going to see all kinds of windmills. You're going to see windmills in Wyoming, in Iowa. You can see even in northeast Pennsylvania, they got windmills on top of the mountains. Wind is the future. Solar is the future. Here's a trivia question for you. What state produces the most electricity from wind? Has the most wind generated electricity? Now your first instinct might be, you know, those bleeding heart liberals down there in California. I'm sure they're the ones. They're not. It's those conservatives down in Texas. Texas generates more electricity than any other state from wind. Think about that for a moment. And even in West Virginia, you got wind turbines on your mountains now, for crying out loud. Another trivia question. Which state generates the highest percentage of their electricity from wind? The highest percentage. Well, if you guessed maybe California, wrong. Texas, no. Iowa. Iowa generates the highest percentage of electricity from wind. The highest percentage. It's still less than the total amount generated in Texas, because Texas is 6 times the size of Iowa with, what, 2 or 3 times the population. And there's a lot of air conditioners down in Texas. So that's just some common facts, some simple facts for you. Coal is dying. Nobody's bringing coal jobs back. No one. Even China is starting to burn less coal. If China is doing it, why aren't we leading the way? Why aren't we leading the way in alternate energy in this country? But if you want to blame somebody for coal's demise, it's capitalists. Blame Wall Street. They'll just snicker at you and turn the other cheek and walk away and drink their $20 martinis, okay? Blame competition, good old-fashioned American competition. Blame American ingenuity for coming up with this incredible thing called directional drilling. But don't blame regulation. It might have a little small part in it. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. President. It might have a little small part in it, but it's not the culprit, the big culprit here. You need to stop being in denial, come toward the light and see. All right, my name is Rich, and I approve this message. That's all I got. Thank you.